Good morning, world changers. It's Suzy Beaumont here, and it's day 2 of creating your personal development plan to self-actualization. With me is transformation coach Murtha, and today we are looking at level 2 of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the development model which outlines the 5 basic principles of becoming our true, authentic, congruent self. Now, you may remember from day 1 how I told you Abraham Maslow called reaching this point of self-actualization is the process of becoming everything you are capable of becoming. Today is all about creating a safe environment for growth, because Maslow believed the next level in his hierarchy of needs was that of safety and the need for personal security, employment, health, resources, and property. Welcome, Will. It's good to see you again. And I want to start by asking what safety means to you, because, when I thought about this, I thought, well, safety can come, there's all different ideals, priorities, values, everything comes into this in place, and it can be a complete different, mean one thing for one person and a different thing for another. So what does safety mean to you?
I think it's no coincidence that last year, one of the big things that I noticed in companies, and I think it's going to be increasing this year, is the term psychological safety.
Mm.
Now, psychological safety, I'll come back to the point and what it links with individual personal development, but psychological safety in the workplace is that you are mentally and emotionally and physically safe. Now, we know kind of, with the women's movement, the last kind of 50 years, with the abuse of children, and awareness around that, we know that what physical safety is, that's kind of looked after.
Mm.
Less talked about, which is what the workplaces are really talking about now, is emotional and mental health safety. So
Yeah.
that is, psychological safety. So, safety in bringing it back to personal development is a safe zone where you are supported by people that are championing your best interests, that you are not with surrounding yourself with energy vampires that kind of deride or mimic, not mimic, they kind of laugh at your
Mm.
change. Oh, why do you want to give up smoking? Why do you want to give up drinking? Oh, you're
The
not so fun
sabotage.
now. Yeah. So we've got to watch for them energy vampires, those Debbie Downers, because if we are going to change, our relationships are going to change around us as well. We
Mm.
don't often think about that, and we don't look at the consequences before we start to realize I need to change now. But whereas Maslow was talking about safety needs from a materialistic point of view, resources, security, networks, property, employment, physical needs, finances, they are all material needs. Well, we've got to look underneath the invisible, below the waterline, because beliefs, emotions, thoughts, perspectives, they are all ready to be changed as well. And until we feel that we're emotionally and mentally stable and safe in the
Mm.
environment that we're living in, unless you get that bit, even having resources, health, and all the other good stuff in place will not be enough, because that's only above the water. Does that make sense? Because
Mm.
it's rarely talked about, this importance of below the waterline.
So again, what we touched on in day 1, it was about solid foundations, having those basic principles in place that, you have the resources to move forward, to get out of survival mode. But it's also having feeling safe so that you do feel secure, so that you
Yeah.
can start to grow. The challenge and the contradiction of this, though, in order to grow, and as you know, and I know through personal development, it requires you to start taking risks, because you have to step out of your comfort zone. The situation you are in, you're trying to change, it means you're doing something different. And we don't like that. We feel the fear, it's unknown, it's uncertain, and that makes us feel unsafe. So how can we be in this level but move through to the next level that requires us to go against what our basic need of safety is.
Right. So we first of all, we've got to appreciate that our body has been conditioned. It might have been conditioned over a few years, even several decades. It's put ourselves in the comfort zone. We talk about the comfort zone in our work all the time, don't we?
Mm.
And if we're going to change means getting uncomfortable. Getting comfortable with the uncomfortable,
Yeah.
getting comfortable with the unknown, getting comfortable with the unseen, because no change will take place until we start stepping out of our boundary lines, going beyond our comfort zone, almost like leaving home. And where you live, where the shops are, where the
Yeah.
services are. Well, the minute you start doing things and saying things and thinking things and expressing things that are different to your old self, the body's going to start kicking back. Now, that is pure survival instinct. It's because the body is there to protect you. It's not there to advance you. And of course, what we don't want to be, we don't want to be, the goal is we don't want to be stuck and have our lives constrained, because it wouldn't be too bad if it kind of just stayed in one place, but it doesn't. If you think about some of our older relatives, when they lose confidence, their life actually starts to get smaller and smaller. They don't do that trip across the city, they don't go on holiday, they don't drive 200 miles, all too far. Oh, they've got to go fish and chips on 7:30 on Friday nights because you know exactly where you're going. They go shopping the same time, the same day, same week. They eat the same things. Now, these are all extremes, but actually human nature is there to protect us, and it protects us by staying in the known. So the number one thing we've got to appreciate is that we've got to learn how to start taking risks and building courage, because we've got to tell ourselves, remind ourselves that it's normal when we get outside of our comfort zone to start feeling agitated, stressed, anxious, not quite right, out of our kind of comfort zone. That is a normal response. It happens to come in the body, and it's a feeling. This is why, feelings are so important. So we've got to appreciate that unless we take risks, no movement is going to happen. Now, the way we best do this is, imagine that you're in a circle. This is the image I usually give to clients. You're in a circle, and almost like a cricket ground, you've got a boundary line. That is your comfort zone that you're used to. Now, every time you go even near your comfort zone of what you're used to and what you live by every day, the minute you go near that comfort zone, dare say even go beyond it, your body starts to give off signals and warnings, and it's called emotions. Fear being number one. So what we've got to appreciate is that we must not stretch too far beyond our comfort zone. It's more of a kind of little and often for those small wins. So we'll stretch ourselves, for example, we're not confident at talking to people at a party or a social event. Well, we talk to a few people for a short amount of time.
Yeah.
And then the next party or the social gathering, we do the same again, only a bit longer. So you don't have to scare yourself and go too extreme, but it's about doing little things bit by bit out of the ordinary, where you've got a little bit of agitation, a little bit of anxiety, but not so much trepidation that it puts you in complete fear that you're too scared to even try it again. I mean, is that what you've found from your own experience?
Definitely. I mean, for me, like if you talked about, certainly if you asked me 5, 10 years ago what personal safety was for me, it was about being in control and trying to control everything. And to the point where, at work, I would literally micromanage every little bit, be on top of it, make sure every box had been ticked so that nothing could go wrong in my, that was in my mindset, that I mean, even when I was doing my conferences, everything had to be perfect, and I went to great lengths to the point of like almost burning myself out because it had to be. And certainly the last year has been all about letting go for me, learning to let go. Like I've had some really big challenges that have been completely out of my control. And it's like the universe has thrown this at me because it's like, you will learn this lesson once and for all, because I can't control everything. But that control gave me security, because it's like, it was almost like, I always remember my mum saying, if you want a job doing right, you've got to do it yourself. And I have absorbed that mentality like tenfold. That's through my DNA, to the point where I won't trust anybody else to do it. So I won't relinquish control. I won't delegate. And I've been slowly chipping away at that, and, letting people do things, but also having to acknowledge, well, okay, they might not do it the way I want it done. They might do, it might not work out. It might be a failure, but that's okay. That person's only going to get better if they practice. And I've got to allow them, I've got to let go and allow them to make the mistakes so that they learn, instead of just taking over, because I'm a fixer, I'm a doer, I'll get weighed in, even if I'm asked or not, weighed in. And that was my way of protecting my personal security, my personal safety. But it also, whilst I was busy fixing everyone else's problems and doing, I was also avoiding myself and the true issues. And it gave me that need of, oh, look at me, oh, people going, oh, that's so wonderful, so, oh, thanks so much for your help. And it's like, oh, look at that lovely warm glow that gives
Them
me.
strokes that you get.
Completely like, oh, you're so wonderful, Suzy. And it's just like, it's all again BS. It was all distracting me from my true congruent self, and avoiding my pain, my wounds, and not facing them. And the biggest challenge that in 2023 was very much sitting there and going, okay, I'm going to just take a big deep breath and breathe this out and let go, because there's nothing I can do about it. And even if I thought, well, I could do this, I had to physically stop myself and say, no, I'm just going to sit and wait this out and see what happens, rather than trying to force an outcome or a response or whatever. And that for me has been the biggest challenge, but it's been liberating. And that, yeah, I mean, who knows where that's going to take me, because that it's going to help for the next level, which is all about relationships and connections and what belonging, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's where, I mean, I started asking you what your personal safety is. What does safety mean for you? What do you need to have in place?
Well, I think this notion of safety from an emotional, mental point of view is that done to an extreme, we would never go, if something was unpredictable, I just wrote down actually, if something was unpredictable, unknown, uncomfortable, uncontrollable, how many of us years ago would keep away from it? If
Yeah.
we couldn't actually predict all of those things and be in total control of the known, the comfortable, we wouldn't go there. Well, actually, psychological safety, we almost have to flip it upside down. It's not about avoiding all the things that take us outside the comfort zone. It's building the tools that we can deal with the unpredictable, unknown, uncomfortable, uncontrollable events, which will inevitably come at us.
Yeah.
Because that's what life is. Life is
Yeah.
unpredictable and comfortable. So, psychological safety for me is not so much avoiding it. It's building the capacity and the tools and having the ability to take risks and build courage, because that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about something, the lion from the heart. We're talking about building the courage to feel uncomfortable, unpleasant emotions.
Yeah.
And that's what all this risk is about. It asks us, our body is being constantly tuned up, churned up, and expressing unpleasant emotions that most of us haven't trained ourselves to deal with. So we distract. And of course, in the life that we live today, we can be safe as much as we want. We can do all those distractions that take us away from our pain, our uncomfortable, kind of unpleasant emotions. And I think what we've got to do is start looking at, what do I need to do now, not to feel safe, because that was your question.
Mm,
What do I need to do now to give myself more confidence that I can deal with whatever comes at me?
yeah. And that the building the courage and the tools and the strength to kind of move forward into that discomfort is the key. And I remember when I heard that phrase, you know, get comfortable with feeling uncomfortable. That was like a light bulb moment and a game changer moment, because I remember all the times when I would push my comfort zone and I would sit there and go, okay, whoa, this feels so uncomfortable right now. And I would just acknowledge it. And you said, it's that thing about naming it and claiming it, and it takes the power out of it. And
Mm,
the other big tool for me came from reading The Chimp Paradox,
mm,
and talks about, so it's by Professor Steve Peters. Peters, yeah. And he talks about how you've got this chimp. So he's talking about the limbic brain. And this is the part of our brain that is triggered when we need to go into fight or flight, to defend off, the saber-toothed tiger, all the rest of it. But a problem is, the modern day dilemma is that we're still responding to issues that don't require the limbic brain to kick in. So the deadline, the fear that we won't complete it, the fear that we'll be found out that we're not good enough, that kind of thing. And we're still responding in that stress response. But he said to visualize a little chimp in your brain. And it's just going absolutely nuts. When you feel that uncomfortable feeling, it's just going, what? Running around going, oh my God, I'm gonna die, oh my God, the world's coming in. Remember that children's story, Chicken Licken, about the sky
chicken licken.
falling? Yeah. And I kind of visualize that this chimp just going crazy. And when I feel that and I feel that anxiety, I talk to the inner chimp and I say, it's okay. I know you're feeling scared right now, but we're okay. We've got this. We're safe. Well, nothing's going to happen to us. At the worst, we're just going to embarrass ourselves. We might, fail at something, I don't know. That's the worst case scenario. And that just calms my nervous system down, that little thing. And I see it, I do it with my two step kids all the time. Like when I see that fear kicking in, I go, oh, that little chimp's going crazy again. Let's talk it. And it's almost like it's reparenting yourself. It's like, it's that inner child in yourself as an adult, that inner child, and you've been triggered back into that place of the fears that kicked in that were embedded and blueprinted into your soul at a young age. And all of those are coming up again. And it's just having to reparent that inner child and go, it's okay, you're safe, you're calm. And it seems like the most simplest thing, but it's so effective. The challenge is, of course, trying to remember that when you're in that state of panic and anxiety and all the rest of it, because these emotions are intense, they take over. And remembering to breathe, just take a step back, a pause, and go, it's okay, you're safe. And remind yourself you are safe.
And don't
Biggest
forget,
game changer for me.
I mean, it's brilliant. I think you put that brilliantly, because I think, we're not taught. What do we do when we feel like that? Grab that chocolate, go and spend some money online or go out shopping,
Yeah.
have that drink, have that cigarette. We're taught, or we've taught ourselves with the culture, that I need to escape from them unpleasant feelings and that chimp quickly and give me a fix that will dumb it down. Put it out the sight, put it into basement. And actually, what we've got to appreciate is that those emotions are energy in the body. They don't lodge in the head, they lodge in the physical cells of the body. And if you want to get straight, this is a big tip, really. If you really want to get that anxiety out of your body quickly, get up, get away from whatever you're doing, away from the computer.
Yeah.
Get outside with light, get your, if it's the summer, get your shoes off, get connected to the earth, go for a walk, go amongst trees, go near water, do some creativity, put some music, your favorite music on. what you've got to realize is that that cloud of anxiety or of unpleasant feelings will just be like a dark cloud. It won't hang around forever. It's just energy. And if you allow it, it will pass. Now, we can get rid of this. And one of the biggest ways is movement, because basically that, like a mind virus, that emotion is now stuck in your body and it's trying to, do you remember when you were a kid and you kind of, you got a penny and you kind of spun the penny and it kind of span for about a minute, all that kinetic energy is still unfurling. Well, the same with an emotion. If you just allow it and not get attached to it, what it's going to do is just wear itself out.
Yeah.
And I think we have to appreciate that. And I love the way you kind of said about having the awareness. So, a big thing for me is appreciating that when that happens and the emotions take over your body, we've got to create the space, the mind space, the reflection time to just pull back and go, what is going on here?
Yeah.
What is this emotion really
Be curious.
about? Be curious. What is this motion? You need to pause to reflect, because what will happen if you don't is that you can build that emotion up and forward it to someone else. So we call it in psychology projection. Bad day at work, go home, kick the dog. So that emotion's got to go somewhere. And the worst thing you want to do when you're angry and you've got this like negative emotion trapped in you, it is normal, by the way, it's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
But you've got to do something constructive with it, productive with it. Otherwise, you'll end up like a rugby ball, passing it all, onto someone else. And we've all been on the end of a tirade, or an emotional outburst of someone that we've worked with, or a relationship where we're like, whoa, what the hell was that?
Yeah.
And actually, it was where someone had got into an emotional frenzy, or we've been that person that's kind of launched into someone else and gone, whoa, Suzy, we'll just pull back a minute.
Yeah.
What are you doing? You're offloading on someone else. And we've all done that.
Oh, yeah, we're all guilty of it. And it is absolutely when we're not feeling psychologically safe. We might not understand why that's happening, but that's what's happened. When you spewed all over somebody and had your verbal diarrhea and you've had your outburst, it's because something is feeling unsafe in your world. And it might be a deep-rooted something from your childhood that's been triggered that you're not even consciously aware of. Or it might be, even arguing about the bins with your partner or whatever it is. You can find yourself in an argument and you're like, this is not even what it's about. It's about something deeper, because somewhere along the way, you're not feeling psychologically safe.
Yeah.
And it is that key thing of just bringing the awareness and going, okay, what's going on here? And the other key thing to remember about when you observe something, it changes. It's quantum physics. Yeah. When you watch it, it changes its behavior. And it's exactly the same thing. As soon as you find yourself, and I really would urge our members to experiment with this, even just throughout the day to day, just whatever emotions are coming up or whatever events and situations come up, go, okay, what's going on? What's going on for me? What's going on for the other person? And watch that dynamic change and how you feel about it. And I always remember this when I decided to give up drinking. So in 2018, I'd had two speakers at one of my conferences from 1 Year No Beer. And they were saying, encouraging people to try giving up alcohol for, a month, 3 months, or a year. And now I knew I could do 3 months, no problem. That wasn't an issue, because basically I could avoid all social situations that required alcohol for 3 months. But I was like, okay, a year's a different story. And I was like, why does that challenge me so much? Why? At a push, I thought I could do 6 months, but a year really challenges me. And I was like, what is that about? So I decided to experiment with it. And you've mentioned about being a scientist in your own life. You mentioned that in day one. And being a scientist, I thought, okay, let me approach this like an experiment. Now, I never thought for 1 minute I suffered social anxiety until you took alcohol away. And all of a sudden, I was in all these social situations and I was feeling the rawness of that anxiety, those emotions of, oh my God, I'm in a pub. I have to speak to people. Oh my God. Oh, and like I've got to converse with people. And like I could feel it. And I was like, this is the moment where I'd be like, get a vodka and lemonade down me. Let me have that.
Courage.
Yeah, let me get the Dutch courage from it. And then that would like, loosen off the inhibitions and I'd be like, oh, so and suddenly I'd be feel confident to speak to that person. I'd be asking questions. I wasn't shy about it. But people had this persona about me that I was confident. But underneath, like a duck on water gliding along the water, but underneath legs going like that, that's what internally was going on for me. And I would mask it through the drink. And then all of a sudden, I'm in these situations where I'm like, I have to feel every piece of this uncomfortable emotion. And I've got two options. I have to stand here and face it and work through it, or I run like mad. And I chose. And then I got into a situation where I could start with practice. I started being able to go to all different kind of events, maybe networking events, weddings, family occasions, all these different occasions, which were all around drink. And I could hold my own. I could have a good laugh. I could like really enjoy myself. That was my key goal. I wanted to enjoy myself without having to have alcohol. I wanted to get up on the dance floor without having to have 3 vodka and lemonades and a Sambuca before I went up there, And I managed to achieve it. It also taught me a really valuable lesson in the people, and we will talk about this in day 3, that the people I was surrounded by, like if I was with the right people, I did not need alcohol at all. And when I was with the wrong people, that's when the urge to drink more, because I was essentially trying to make their company better by fueling myself with alcohol. Because I was just like, we're not on the same page. There's no alignment here. Why am I hanging out with these people? It's just like, they're not bad people. We're just not compatible. It's just not my thing. So yeah, that was a very long answer to how I've dealt with that thing, dealt with that uncomfortable thing. But quantum physics, observing what is going on will change the dynamic, and then that's when you've got the choice and go, okay, what am I going to do with this now? Now that this awareness has come in, I have a choice. And, if you do choose to run away from it, that's fine, because it is a case of, well, okay, I'm not ready, but what are the tools I need to put in place to get myself ready? So what are some of other tools that you can suggest?
So yeah, just before I move on to about the importance of failure and learning our weaknesses and strengths, the number one thing which you kind of ended with there is, we've got to think about what we're thinking about. We've got to think about what we're thinking about. It's called meta in physics and science. It's called metacognition. Think about what you're thinking about and feel what you're feeling. Feel the feels, as one of my clients says. So we've got to do that, because that will create that reflection space, almost like a circuit breaker.
Journal about it as well. If you're struggling to figure it out, journal about it.
So they're really important. Now, going back to your journal, a couple of things to try. So past wins. This is a really good journal exercise. Where is the proof? Because you can't con your own body. You can tell yourself all these flashy affirmations, but your body knows. Your body knows the difference. So your mouth can say what it wants, but the body will feel it. So where is the proof and evidence of your past wins when you broke through your comfort zone, got outside your safety zone, you trusted yourself, where your confidence was built? We've all got wins. Get them down. They're all proof and evidence, and they will help to build your self-esteem and worth and self-value, but particularly self-confidence and belief up to doing things beyond yourself. So that's a big one. Another one that we do with clients is know your strengths. What do people always tell you? We all have friends around us that always tell us, oh, Susie, you're good at this, you're natural at that. But because we're too close to our own lives, oh, well, it's nothing, it's nothing. Well, often our super strengths are so super and we're so used to them that we just take them for granted that everyone's got them. Well, they haven't. So
Yeah.
what do people always tell you? What do you know
It's the things that you
yourself?
do automatically, second nature, without thinking, that
Without
don't
thinking,
challenge
without
you.
feeling, without
Yeah.
worrying, without stressing, and you do it brilliantly.
And you do an autopilot, and it's just, you just, like you say, it's that phrase you say, well, everyone could do this. Well, it's those things.
They're superhero strengths, call them. But equal, flip the coin over and look at what I call your anti-hero. What are your weaknesses? Because don't forget, we've got to work on our strengths. I totally buy into the whole strengths finder thing that, Gallup's been around for 20 odd years. But what a lot of people often forget is that half of the work is knowing your weaknesses as well. Because if you just work on your strengths and not your weaknesses, it's going to be like a colander trying to hold water. You're always going to be wasting energy. So, work out what your weaknesses are, because then you can start to build tools to apply to help you with your life. Now, weaknesses don't mean you have to turn them into strengths, but if you at least shore them up and make sure that you don't keep sabotaging yourself, or every time you've not got confidence, as in your example, I have to drink 3 gin and tonics or something. Know your weaknesses and sabotaging habits and traits, because once you know them and you name them, then you can kind of go after them. Yeah. So another one is failure. Now, the business book of the year last year was a book by Amy Edmondson in America. And it was all around the idea that we've got to learn and lean into our failures. Now, this is one of the biggest business books in the world last year. So, learning from our failure is really also learning from rejection. So that's another thing that we've got, because we all feel at one time or another rejected. Yeah. And the minute we go outside of our safety zone, which is what we're talking about here, and feel rejected, is when the emotions start coming up. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I'm going to fail. What will people think of me? I'm a disaster. I'm not, worthy of anything. So, we've got to start leaning into and learning from our failures and accepting they're part of the human condition. Because too often we beat ourselves up. We're not gentle enough with us. Lack of self-compassion. We've got to understand that if you are stretching beyond your comfort zone, your safety zone, failure is inevitable. So you might as well start learning about failure, learning about rejection, because if you're stretching and growing, failure and rejection is going to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there is so much growth that comes in the failure, because you learn, okay, that didn't work, but let me try a different approach. And there's so much comes from that. If everything goes smoothly and you succeed, which very rarely happens, but by some fluke that you've just done something and it's gone and it's happened. Well, I'd probably argue you're not pushing yourself and you're doing the things that you're working on your strengths. But the failure, you're like, oh, okay, all right, okay, that didn't work. Let me do this. Let me pick myself up. And it builds resilience. It builds confidence in yourself, self-esteem, and just equips you with all these different skills. So, there is enormous, we don't give enough credit to failing, and we don't. Yeah. When we see all these success stories, the successful businessman, woman, or the, whatever it means, the inventions, or, the overnight successes, we don't understand and we don't hear the story of how many times they failed before they got to that point. And that is fundamentally, it really irritates me when I see all the, because I feel like we're creating a society now where, because of social media, we see a lot of people thinking, oh, I'll just be a YouTuber. I see this with my kids now, the step kids. They're just like, oh, I'm going to be a YouTuber when I'm older. And they see all these YouTubers with
Pitch
thousands
perfect.
of followers and making loads of money. And you're like, you don't realize how much work is going on behind the scenes to make that happen,
How much
and how
failure?
much, yeah, and the failure. Absolutely. So, I mean, if we unpick, we're coming to the end of this, but if we unpick, so we've got employment, resources, health, and property as we've talked about personal security. I mean, employment, obviously, that pretty much goes without saying that, we need to feel valued in our workplace. We need to feel supported, that we can support to,
Mm,
not having that imposter syndrome. We need to know that we can fail at work and we're not going to be sacked for it or let
mm.
go, that we will be encouraged. But when we talk about resources, health, and property, so resources, I mean, that it kind of seems similar to level one. It's about having those basic needs met. But is it more than that? Is it about having the right people around you? Is it the finances? Is it the training that's required? What do we need? What do we mean when we're talking about feeling safe when it comes to our
My,
resources?
my personal opinion is that if we're going to do practical personal development, grounded, which is what we're talking about now,
Yeah.
if we want to feel safe, it means that, to me, whatever is going on out, the ultimate goal that we're really going for here, Susie, is that regardless of what is happening on the outside, the materialistic, with our job, our
Mm,
relationship, our health, regardless of all that, that inside we can still build a resilient, strong, self-assured, self-worth, confidence that we've got the ability to deal with it. That is the ultimate goal we're going for. And in that, too many of us have been caught up in the past that if the outside world is going well, our identity, got a good job, got a good relationship, drive a good car, live in a big house, if all the external stimuli is
mm,
lined up, we will feel good inside. Now, I can,
mm.
I
That's
coach a
why the
lot of it.
pandemic was so destructive for everyone, because it suddenly was like, oh my God, you know.
It asked us to go inward,
Yeah,
introspection. And if anything of a big benefit that's happened the last kind of 4 years since, March is almost 4 years
I
since the
know, it's
pandemic
insane,
started,
isn't it?
where that time has gone.
Mm,
But the one benefit that it's asked us all to do is go inward, because
mm,
personal development and safety, half of it is above the waterline, which is what our material world is asking us to do. But the pandemic asked us to go below the waterline and look at what we really think and feel, what our real beliefs are, our real confidence levels are. And so, if we want to get safe, we've got to start looking at not what's going on outside of us, but are we building a big enough structure inside? And part of that, I think, is the expectations that we put on ourselves. This is the whole reason that me and you have done this series of 5, is that we live in a world now where people are setting themselves up. They're reading the best self-help books in the world and expecting to change,
mm,
without doing the work,
yeah.
just looking at the wisdom. And actually, the reason we've done this is to, if we can start realigning and resetting our expectations of self, that this is a process we go through with growth,
Mm,
and not overshoot it, because too many times we put our expectations way lofty, way up in the air, then we don't reach them naturally because we're not superhuman, and then we kind of feel even more deflated and more depressed. So we've got to, I was with a friend, me and Jane were with a friend a few days ago, and he's gone through a lot. Cancer, his wife's gone through cancer. He had a heart attack. He's only in his early 50s, him and his partner.
mm,
And so his mantra for 2024 is very much take every day and every week as it comes, and we
mm,
will deal with that. And then the next, and then the next. Whereas before, if I'd have spoke to him 2, 3 years ago, he would have given me lofty expectations and goals and objectives for his
mm,
business, for his lifestyle, for his health, for his wealth, all the rest of it. And it takes the disaster and near death to suddenly say, hang on, let's get our priorities in order now. Let's build it from the bottom and get the basics right. Because if you haven't got your health,
I was going to say, because he's gone back to his basic
he's
level
gone
one,
back.
hasn't he?
He's gone back to the basics. So I think Maslow spoke in a really good way to level 1 and 2. They're very kind of like brother and sister, really.
Yeah.
They're very twinned. We're going to really move on day 3, as the audience is going to see. We're going to move it up another level, because I think they're very similar, foundation 1 and 2. The safety and psychological, safety needs are very similar. And then we move it up because you're really into love and connection and belonging, which we're going to come back to.
Yeah. I mean, just going back to your friend there, I mean, health is obviously one of the safety needs. And that's the thing. If we don't have our health, everything else is pretty much irrelevant because it impacts everything. So when we're looking at the safety needs and what our listeners can do going forward, the self-care, I mean, I'm always banging on about self-care in the Change Your World Everyday group, but it is really moving it forward to having a self-care practice that is improving and maintaining your health mentally, physically, every day. Spiritually, absolutely. Yeah, that as well, because that's vitally important. The last of the needs in the safety needs is property, which, you said about them being brother and sister, and, level 1, we need shelter. But it changes the wording to property. And I thought, that's an interesting one. Again, both level 1 and level 2 are all about environment and being safe and having these needs met. But what do we mean by property? What is it talking about there? Because what's the difference between that and shelter?
Well, we've got to remember it's several decades old.
Yes.
And I think the thing obviously was to own your own property, because, how many friends do we all know of that are in rented property and they've got their children in schools, they're well settled, they're into local doctors, they do business in their local area, and suddenly their landlady says, right, I'm selling up, you're moving. The person can't get a property within 30-mile radius of where they lived before that's affordable, and they end up having to move to a different town or a different city, upend all of that. So I think Maslow, although it's a bit out of date, I think when he was talking about property, 50s, 60s, 70s was a big time for home ownership and getting our own home. And I think we've lost that kind of ability now, because so many people rent and so many people kind of hop from one to another. But actually, we've got to remember that a big goal for people post-war in Britain, particularly, was to own your own house. And then it kind of, in 60s, 70s, 80s, it took another great big leap. The big thing was that you control your life, or a big part of it, where other people don't pull your life like a puppet. I think that's what he's kind of talking to with property.
The interesting thing about that is that, we become almost slaves to the mortgage. We aspire to these lovely houses and, the mortgage, and then that means getting the job that pays well, but it might not serve your purpose, your values, all the rest of it, So again, that's a really key, important thing to kind of look at and go, well, what are my needs? What do I need in a property? Do I need to own? Does that give me security? If it does, then yes. Okay, what does that home, can it, affordability? Because being able to be comfortable and afford it, that makes you feel safe. If you're at risk of, your one mortgage payment from the house being repossessed, or you don't, if you were to fall sick and you had to be off work for several months, then of course so it's really getting our listeners to really think, and our members to think about, okay, what is what is the safety net? What is the security? What makes me feel safe? And am I currently living my life in a way that makes me feel safe and secure? Or am I constantly in that stress response that's causing anxiety in me, that's causing stress, that's, making me project my anger, my fears, and all the rest of it onto everybody else? And really evaluating that, and then starting to kind of go, okay, how do I start to change this? What needs to change? What do I need to do differently? What do I need to do less of? What do I need to do more of? All these questions that you can reflect upon in your journals. So
I think
lots
you
to
put that
think about
brilliantly.
there.
I think you put that brilliantly because, you know, if you've got a bigger house than you really need with a bigger mortgage that's stretching you, it could mean that the job that you loathe and hate, you're now stuck with,
Yeah,
which makes you miserable and it's putting strain under your relationship. So
yeah,
they've all got domino effects, haven't they?
yeah,
So
absolutely.
we've all
Ripple
got
effect.
to kind of, I think this is what the last 4 years has done, has
Mm,
really got people to reflect. Do I need, you know, am I happy in this relationship? I mean, what, 2020, 2021, the divorce rate in the UK,
mm.
around about 40, 45% up.
Yeah, because
Suddenly
none of the
people
distractions weren't there.
people started realizing I don't really want to be with this partner anymore, you know.
So I've just spent 24/7 with them, and quite
Right,
frankly,
right. And
so
we've all been there, Susie. We've all been there,
absolutely.
right? So I think all of that really kind of comes into this fact that, you know, having time alone to reflect is sometimes it can feel scary because we're thinking about things we've never thought about before. But actually, it's things that have always been in the basement to do with our security that we've just either not had time to do because we're too busy 24/7, quicker, faster, more, or we've just been too scared to go into the basement because that's where the monsters live, and it means we've got to deal with the you know, inconvenient truths, the uncomfortable, unpleasant emotions, and all the other kind of realities. So, you know, this time that, you know, just kind of winding it up really is that, you know, to feel safe really sometimes means to look at what is making me not feel safe, and
Yeah,
that's where your journaling comes in.
yeah, absolutely. Well, we will end there. Thank you again for another great session, Will. Fantastic. Lots of takeaways there. And I would very much love to hear what our listeners think. You know, what's your takeaways? What have you taken away from today? What actions are you going to take as a result? What's got your mind racing? What are you thinking about? And what are you thinking needs to change, need to do more of, do less of? Do share in the group or the comments and let us know what your thoughts are. We'll be back with day 3, where we will be looking at relationships, all about love and belonging. That's level 3 of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where it's all about friendship, intimacy, family, and sense of connection. So a biggie. And I think this is an area that can cause a lot of happiness, but can also cause a lot of unhappiness if it's not right and it's not dealt with. So yes, we'll be exploring that in day 3.
Look forward to speaking then. Take care.
All right, all the best. Bye.
Bye. Bye.